This is the fourth video in a series about the Minimus Maximus module by Count Modula. In this video, we'll be exploring some basic functions of the mean and maximum output of the module. We'll be doing this in a way that builds on some of the techniques that we used in the previous patch. We'll start by removing some of the changes that we did previously to this patch. The goal here is to simplify the patch so that we can hear what's going on with mean and maximum a little easier at first. We'll disconnect the length adder sec from the first 8 sec. Also, you're going to pan V2 back to center, so 0%. Next, I'll take the release time on the Croon ADSR envelope down to about 700 milliseconds or so. Then I'll mute aux B. Remember that this was the aux that we were using the chronoblob on. After that, I'm going to put some labels in the patch. I'll label V1 for voice 1, V2 for voice 2, min for minimum, which I also might refer to as the croon voice. I'm also going to go ahead and delete the notes that had the sequencer steps. Next, I'll label min-max A for the first Minimus Maximus module, and then I'll label min-max B for the second Minimus Maximus module. I can also go ahead and get rid of these scopes for now. Next, I'll label aux A, which is the plateau reverb, and then aux B, which is the chronoblob. Lastly, I'm going to set the chronoblob from resampling to crossfading. We'll start by building a new voice based on the mean output of the Minimus Maximus module. You can copy the macro oscillator from either voice 1 or voice 2, as well as the filter from voice 1 or voice 2. I'm going to go ahead and pull step 2 out of here for now. So we're going to take the mean output from min-max A. We will connect that to the quantizer and to the slope detector. Note that I have an octave shift of 1 on the quantizer. Just as a refresher from the previous videos, we'll be using the slope detector to generate gates and triggers, and then we'll be using chances just to slow those changes down. That will be triggering our macro oscillator, as well as the sample and hold, which will be taking the pitch from the quantizer. But definitely recommend using a quantizer. Later on, I'll show you what it sounds like without one. With the minimum and maximum outputs, we can get away without having a quantizer, but with the mean output, we will certainly need one. I have adjusted the timbre slightly. You can certainly experiment with that. And then we'll go ahead and take the left output of the filter, plug that in input 4. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and name this mean. Also go ahead and add some reverb. Lastly, I will pan the mean 40% to the right. Now let's do the same thing without the quantizer. Remember that the mean takes the total values and then divides them by the number of inputs. In this case, even though inputs A and B are quantized, that calculated mean value will almost certainly be out of tune. Obviously, you could use that as an effect if you wanted, but for now, we'll keep it quantized. Go ahead and reconnect the quantizer. As it is, you can experiment with the percentage on the chances module. At 50%, I think the mean voice gives us a nice counterpoint to voices 1 and 2 without becoming too busy, but you might prefer to have that percentage higher or lower. For the next step, we'll need 3 hot tuna modules. We're going to go ahead and set this to flat. So a lot of the time, I find myself using the mean output to basically create a voice that is in between 2 other voices. In this case, voice 1 is going to be the higher voice, voice 2 is going to be the lower voice, and then mean, in theory, should be the voice that is in between those 2. I'll take the volt per octave that is going into voice 1. I'll take the volt per octave that is going into voice 2. And then I'll take the volt per octave that is going into the mean voice. Next, I'm going to label these. If you're not familiar with chord theory, you can certainly feel free to skip this part. It's honestly not that important to understand in the patch, but I think it is useful to see some of the examples here. I think one of the main strengths of the Minimus Maximus module is that it lets us generate new voices that are related to each other in a way. So if I just had 3 different sequencers running, there's really no guarantee that I'm going to get chords or triads or 7th chords or really anything in there. But with the Minimus Maximus, it just tends to generate chords or things that are very close to chords. Keep in mind we're in the key of C minor, so any of the chords that come up will be diatonic to that key. So what I want to do here is just kind of go frame by frame and look through some of the harmonies that are presenting themselves with the hot tunas. This won't be exact. We're going to get some chords that are incomplete or sometimes just don't even really fit into a chord, but I think what we'll find is that a lot of times we tend to get either triads, sus chords, or potentially even incomplete 7th chords. As I go through this, I'm also not really going to be paying attention to the octaves or the inversions of the chords, so just keep that in mind. To start here, we would have what looks to me like an A-flat major 7th chord. We could view this as a G minor 7, a lot of Fs. This could be a B-flat chord, or it could be an F sus4. You have a B-flat dominant 7th chord, a C minor 7 chord, F, or a possibly a C sus4. They're G minor 7 in this case, C minor 7, G minor, B flat sus4, F minor 7, A flat major, and C minor. Before we move on, I'll duplicate another hot tuna and connect the volt per octave from the croon and label this min. So as it is, there are some range issues that I'm not totally happy with for some of the voices. As I was demoing this patch and experimenting with different techniques, there was something that I came across just accidentally. I don't really have a great explanation for it other than it seems to make the patch sound better. For the next step, we'll need another chances module, a sequential switch set to 2 steps, and another quantizer module. Here we're going to take the mean and maximum output from min-max A, we'll use one of the gate outputs from min-max B to trigger the switch. In this case, I'll use the output from input B, and I'll connect that to the chances. Lastly, I'm going to run the output of the quantizer into input C on min-max A. be honest, I'm not 100% sure why that seems to make the patch work better for me, especially later on as we use some of the more advanced techniques. My guess is that it has to do with adding another input for the mean to divide by, as well as giving us some higher values. Next, we'll talk about step 2 with the mean voice. We'll take the maximum output from min-max A and connect that to the oct module here. Then we'll take the mean output from the quantizer into input 1 of the sequential switch. Then we'll take the output of the switch and run that back into the quantizer. Move things over. What this will do for us is give us a little more variety in that voice, and that is going to switch back and forth between the mean and the maximum output for min-max A. Before we listen, let's move this up. I'm still finding that the minimum voice is just a little too low, so we're going to address that. So right now, we're taking the minimum output 2 octaves lower. We're also taking a perfect fifth above that and down an octave, which would make it a perfect fourth below, and then switching between those two here. So I'm going to take the original pitch and connect that to step 3. And I'm also going to take the perfect 8 or the octave and connect that to step 4. Set the switch from 2 steps to 4 steps. And I'll also raise the octave shift on this quantizer from -1 to 0. Next, we'll be building a voice based on the maximum output from min-max A. Take the same filter from the previous voices, as well as the macro oscillator. In this case, I've set the harmonics to 100%. We'll be using a harmony module, as well as a slope detector, a sequential switch, quantizer, another sample and hold. We'll also be using a chances module set to 95% B, which is going to trigger this AD envelope. And that is going to be modulating the FM modulation on the macro oscillator. We'll go ahead and connect the maximum output to the harmony module and the slope detector. So my idea here was that if we roughly get root third and fifth between voices 1, 2, and the mean voice, is that I could use this voice to sit on top and potentially create 7th chords. Now, it doesn't work like that 100% of the time, or really even 50% of the time, but as I'll show you later, some of the times it does, and at the very least, it creates another interesting texture and layer on top of everything else. Now, we don't necessarily need the harmony module, but I do think that it makes things a little more interesting sounding. We're going to take the perfect fifth into step 1, or step 2, sorry, of the switch, doesn't really matter. We'll also take the minor 6 output and run that into whatever other step you're not using. Keep in mind that the octave shift on the quantizer is set to 1. We'll connect that to the mixer. And while we're here, we will label it max H for maximum harmony. Set some reverb and some delay. We can set up another hot tuna. We'll label it maximum harmony. We'll take the volt per octave from the maximum harmony voice. Here we could see this as a G minor 7 chord without the third. This would be a D half diminished 7th chord, G minor flat 9, B flat 7, A flat major 7, C minor, G minor 7, D diminished, F minor 9 without the third, A flat major 7, B flat 9, E flat major 7, E flat major 9. Let's take a second and go over some of the basic theory behind this. If we take it for granted that we're getting a triad with a root, third, and a fifth between voices 1, 2, and the mean voice, if the third happens to be the highest voice, the maximum harmony voice would be coming in a fifth above it. So for example, if we had a C minor chord with the notes C, E flat, and G, if E flat the third would be on top, a fifth above that would be B flat, which in this case would give us a C minor 7 chord. In the same case, if the fifth was on top, or G, a fifth above G would give us the note D, which would give us a C minor 9 chord. If the root is on top, a fifth above that will simply give us the fifth of the chord, but if we have the minor 6th above that, give us the notes C, E flat, G, and then A flat would be the minor 6th above. That would give us an inverted major 7th chord. It's not an exact way of getting harmonies. You could certainly use other modules if we wanted to be more precise, but in a generative sense, I think it actually gives us pretty interesting harmonies throughout. I think in a future video, I'll explore some of the more strict counterpoint options that the Minimus Maximus module gives us. Before the final listen, I'm going to go ahead and clean up and rearrange the patch a bit. We'll listen to this patch at 60 beats per minute with aux B, the delay bus, on. We'll also listen to it at 120 beats per minute with that aux off. Of course, don't forget to label my weird little thing over here. In the next video, we'll be going over some of the more advanced techniques that I've used with the mean and maximum output. Until then, happy patching and thanks for watching.